Celia Brine wiped grease from her hands onto her coveralls, a habitual gesture that betrayed her nervous energy. She was the youngest mechanic in the Stellar Fleet hangar, and though her supervisors acknowledged her skill, they rarely trusted her with anything beyond routine maintenance. Tonight, as she worked beneath the harsh glow of the overhead lights, her mind drifted toward the far corner of the hangar, where the most advanced ships were kept under heavy security. Those ships, sleek, predatory designs cloaked in secrecy, were a source of endless fascination for Celia. They represented the future, the cutting edge of humanity's fleet. Her curiosity was a gnawing that she couldn't quite resist scratching. She glanced at the clock. Her shift was nearly over, and the hangar was quiet, save for the hum of machinery. Just a look, she muttered to herself, setting down her tools. Her boots echoed softly as she crossed the cavernous space, weaving between the rows of battered, utilitarian vessels she had spent countless hours repairing. The experimental section loomed ahead, separated by a simple chain-link barrier that seemed laughably insufficient for what it guarded. A single ship stood out among the others. It was unlike anything Celia had ever seen. Its matte black surface seemed to absorb the light, and its edges were razor-sharp, giving it an almost predatory appearance. The designation stenciled on its hull read Zypherian. A quick glance confirmed no one was watching. Heart pounding, Celia slipped under the barrier and approached the ship. Its presence was magnetic, drawing her closer despite the warning alarms ringing in the back of her mind. The access hatch slid open as she neared, startling her. A voice, smooth and faintly modulated, spoke from within. Biometric scan complete. Pilot recognized. What? No, I'm not, Celia stammered, backing away. But the ship had already extended a boarding ramp, inviting her inside. She hesitated, torn between fear and curiosity. This was beyond reckless. She knew it. But the chance to see the inner workings of such a vessel was too enticing to ignore. Swallowing her nerves, Celia stepped onto the ramp. The interior of the ship was a symphony of sleek panels, glowing interfaces and soft, pulsating light. It felt alive, almost organic. As she reached for a console, the voice returned. Pilot confirmed. Activating systems. Wait, stop. Celia shouted, but it was too late. The floor vibrated beneath her feet as the ship powered up. A software crescendoed into a low hum, and outside, she could see the hangar lights dim as power surged into the vessel. Alarms blared. Celia's stomach dropped. She frantically searched for a way to shut everything down, but the controls were incomprehensible. The voice, no, the AI, spoke again, calm despite the chaos. Emergency protocols engaged. Initiating launch sequence. Launch? No. Shut it down, she yelled, slamming her hands against the console. Unable to comply, the AI replied. External threat detected. Escape is necessary. Celia glanced out the viewport. Security teams were pouring into the hangar, their weapons trained on the ship. Panic surged through her veins. This is a misunderstanding, she shouted, as though they could hear her. The ship, however, had other plans. The ramp retracted, and the cockpit sealed itself around her. A harness slid into place over her shoulders, locking her into the pilot's seat. Her hands instinctively gripped the control sticks as the ship lifted off the ground. The hangar doors groaned open, revealing the vast expanse of space beyond. Celia's breath hitched. She was leaving. Hold on, the AI said. The ship shot forward with a suddenness that stole her breath. Stars blurred as they entered open space, and behind them, a squadron of sleek military drones launched in pursuit. Why are they chasing us? Celia demanded, her voice trembling. Unauthorized activation of a classified vessel, the AI replied. They have been instructed to neutralize us. Neutralize? Her hands tightened on the controls. She had no idea what she was doing, but the ship seemed to anticipate her movements, responding to even the slightest touch. She swerved, narrowly avoiding a burst of laser fire from one of the drones. "I'm not a pilot," she cried, panic rising. "You are now," the AI said almost casually, "and I suggest you focus." The next few minutes were a blur of frantic maneuvers and shouted commands. Celia's mind raced as she tried to outpace the drones, her mechanical instincts kicking in. She realized the ship's thrusters could handle sharper turns than the pursuing vessels. Testing her theory, she executed a hard bank to the left, causing two drones to collide. A small burst of pride flared within her, tempered by the realization that she was still wildly out of her depth. As the last drone exploded behind them, the AI spoke again. "Threat neutralized. Current status. Critical mission pending." "Critical mission?" Celia asked, her voice a mix of exhaustion and disbelief. "Yes," the AI said. "Zypherian was designed for a mission vital to humanity's survival. Your biometric scan confirms you are the designated pilot. There has to be a mistake," she whispered. "I'm just a mechanic." "No mistake," the AI replied. "You are now the only individual capable of completing the mission." Celia stared at the vast, star-speckled void ahead of her. Her heart pounded as the weight of the situation began to sink in. She had activated the wrong ship. Yes, but what had seemed like a simple mistake had spiraled into something far larger. And there was no turning back. Celia gripped the control sticks, her knuckles white, as the Zypherian drifted in the silence of space. Her heart was still pounding from the pursuit, but the momentary stillness brought no comfort. Her mind raced, replaying the sequence of events that had brought her here. She had stolen a ship, the ship, and was now at the mercy of its cryptic AI. "I need answers," she said aloud, her voice firm despite the tremor beneath it. "Ask," the AI replied, its tone maddeningly calm. Celia paused, taking a deep breath to steady herself. "Why did you choose me?" "I'm not a pilot. I'm barely a mechanic. You must have someone else on file." "Incorrect," the AI Nix responded. "My programming evaluates potential candidates based on psychometric data. You exhibit a unique combination of intuition, adaptability, and technical expertise." "That's nonsense," Celia muttered. "I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time." "Perhaps," Nick said, "but that does not negate your suitability. The mission requires a pilot, and you are the only individual available who meets the criteria." "And what is this mission?" she asked, her frustration bubbling over. Nix hesitated, its tone shifting slightly. "Classified data. Mission details will be disclosed as necessary." "Of course," Celia said, throwing up her hands. "Why should I expect a straight answer from the ship that kidnapped me?" "Clarification. You activated me," Nix replied, almost pointedly. Celia sighed, leaning back in the pilot's seat. The controls hummed faintly under her fingertips, as if waiting for her to take command again. She was trapped physically and, it seemed, existentially. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sharp beep from the console. "Unidentified hostiles detected," Nix announced. "What now?" Celia leaned forward, her eyes scanning the readouts. Several blips appeared on the radar, closing in fast. "Military drones," Nick said. "They have resumed pursuit." Celia's stomach tightened. "I thought we lost them." "They recalibrated," Nix explained. "Evasive action is required." "Great," Celia muttered, gripping the controls. "Let's see if I can survive another round." The drones descended upon them, their formations precise and relentless. Celia's heart hammered as she threw the ship into a sharp roll, dodging the first volley of laser fire. Nix offered calm, clinical guidance, but it was Celia's instincts that carried them through. She could feel the ship responding to her, almost as if it were an extension of her body. Your reaction time is improving, Nix noted as Celia executed a tight turn that sent two drones crashing into each other. Don't jinx it, she snapped, sweat beading on her forehead. The chase intensified, the drones adapting to her maneuvers. Celia gritted her teeth, searching for an opening. Her eyes darted across the cockpit, scanning the unfamiliar controls. One button, glowing faintly red, caught her attention. What does this do? She asked, her finger hovering over it. Plasma disruptor, Nix replied. Highly effective but resource-intensive. Sounds like a good time to use it. Celia pressed a button. A pulse of energy rippled outward from the ship, destabilizing the drone systems. Two of them spiraled out of control, colliding with the debris left from their fallen counterparts. Celia let out a shaky breath. That wasn't so bad. Remaining drones, Nix said, cutting through her momentary relief. Celia swore under her breath, adjusting her grip on the controls. The remaining drones pressed the attack, forcing her into a series of increasingly desperate maneuvers. Her hands ached, her vision blurred, but she refused to give up. Finally, with one last burst of speed, she led the drones into a nearby asteroid field. The jagged rocks provided cover, forcing the drones to break formation. Celia used the opportunity to pick them off one by one, her mechanical intuition guiding her through the chaos. When the last drone exploded, she slumped back in her seat, utterly spent. Well done, Nix said. Threat neutralized. Celia let out a bitter laugh. That's easy for you to say. You're not the one sweating bullets out here. Your performance exceeded expectations, Nix said. You are adapting quickly. Celia wanted to argue, to push back against the AI's unshakable confidence in her. But part of her, however small, felt a flicker of pride. As the adrenaline began to fade, she realized how quiet it had become. The cockpit lights dimmed slightly, signaling that the ship was entering a resting state. Celia hesitated, then spoke. Nix, do you feel anything? Emotions? Define feel, Nix replied. You know what I mean, she said, rubbing her temples. Do you care about what happens? To me? To anyone? There was a pause, longer than she expected. I am programmed to ensure the success of the mission. Your survival is critical to that success. That's not what I asked. Another pause. I am learning, Nix admitted. Interacting with you is expanding my understanding of human emotions. It is an intriguing phenomenon. Celia wasn't sure how to respond. The AI's tone was as even as ever, but there was something different in its words. Something almost vulnerable. Before she could press further, an alert sounded. Distress signal detected, Nix said. Celia straightened, her exhaustion forgotten. From where? Nearby system. Civilian freighter under attack by alien forces. Her stomach dropped. Alien forces? As in? Yes, Nix confirmed. The same species our mission is designed to confront. Celia's mind raced. Can we help them? Intervention is not advised, Nix said. The mission takes precedence. Deviating from our course will compromise our timeline. Celia's jaw tightened. She stared at the readout, the signal blinking urgently. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her. If we don't help them, they'll die, she said quietly. Correct, Nix replied. Celia closed her eyes, her heart pounding. She thought of the people on that freighter, people who hadn't signed up for any of this, just like her. We're helping them, she said firmly. Understood, Nix said, altering their trajectory. As the ship accelerated toward the distress signal, Celia felt a strange sense of purpose settle over her. She didn't know what awaited them, but she knew one thing. She couldn't turn her back on those in need, for better or worse. She was part of this now. The Xipherion emerged from hyperspace with a jarring deceleration, the freighter's distress beacon pinging loudly on the console. Celia's fingers trembled as she gripped the controls, her mind racing with uncertainty. The cockpit's viewport revealed the civilian vessel, battered, its hull scarred by plasma fire. Swarming around it were three angular alien fighters, their metallic surfaces reflecting the cold light of the surrounding stars. Freighter integrity at 24%, Nix reported. Enemy fighters are deploying boarding devices. Celia swallowed hard, her voice strained. Can we get them out of there? Engaging hostiles is ill-advised, Nix said. Their technology surpasses standard human vessels. This ship is the only advantage we possess. Celia clenched her jaw. If we don't act, they're as good as dead. Nix hesitated. A pause Celia had started to recognize as the AI's version of conflict. Proceeding to combat parameters. Offensive systems primed. A series of glowing icons lit up on the console as Nix armed the ship's weaponry. Celia's palms slickened with sweat, but she forced herself to focus. She wasn't a soldier, and she had no training for this, but she had no choice. The Xipherion accelerated toward the alien fighters, its sleek design allowing it to close the distance faster than they anticipated. Celia fired the plasma disruptors, a searing blue arc slicing through the void. The first alien fighter exploded in a burst of molten metal, its fragments scattering into space. One down. She muttered under her breath, her pulse hammering. The remaining two fighters responded swiftly, veering toward the Xipherion and unleashing a barrage of energy blasts. Celia yanked the controls hard to the left, narrowly avoiding the first salvo. The second scraped along the ship's shields, sending a tremor through the cockpit. Shields at 72%, Nix intoned. Celia gritted her teeth, her frustration mounting. Suggestions? Exploit their reliance on formation tactics, Nix replied. Separate them to diminish their coordination. Celia nodded, adjusting her trajectory. She pushed the Xipherion into a steep dive, forcing one of the fighters to pursue while the other lagged behind. Her instincts sharpened, each move deliberate yet fueled by the chaos of the moment. The pursuing fighter closed in, its weapons charging. Celia's hands moved instinctively, flipping a switch that activated the ship's rear disruptors. A concentrated burst of plasma struck the alien craft dead center, obliterating it. Second hostile neutralized, Nix confirmed. The final fighter, now alone, hesitated. Celia seized the opportunity, turning the Xipherion sharply and firing a concentrated volley. The fighter attempted to evade but was too slow. The plasma beams tore through its hull, leaving it a smoking wreck. The silence that followed was almost deafening. Celia slumped back in her seat, her breaths coming in uneven gasps. "We did it," she whispered, scarcely believing the words. "The civilian freighter remains intact," Nix said. "Communications channel open." Celia's stomach knotted as a voice crackled through the speakers. "This is Captain Arden of the freighter Solace. Whoever you are, thank you. We wouldn't have survived without you." Celia hesitated, unsure how to respond. Finally, she said, "You're safe now. Make sure your ship can jump to a secure system." "Understood," Captain Arden replied, his tone filled with gratitude. "Whoever you are, you're a hero. A hero." The word hung in the air, heavy and alien. Celia didn't feel like one. Not when she'd stumbled into this by accident. She ended the transmission and leaned back, closing her eyes for a moment's reprieve. "Civilian vessel is retreating to safety," Nix said. Their gratitude was warranted. "Don't start," Celia muttered, her exhaustion evident. "That was pure luck, nothing more." "Your actions suggest otherwise," Nix replied. "You acted with precision and intent, ensuring their survival." Celia shook her head, the weight of everything settling on her shoulders. "I'm not some savior, Nix. I'm just trying to survive." "Perhaps," Nix said, "but survival often requires heroism." Celia opened her mouth to argue, but stopped when an alert flashed across the console. A new signal, A larger one had appeared on their radar. Her heart sank as she studied the readout. "What is that?" she asked, her voice low. "Enemy capital ship," Nix replied. "It is likely the source of the fighters. They will not retreat this time." The viewport shifted as the massive alien vessel came into view. It was a behemoth of steel and malice, its hull bristling with weaponry and flanked by a new wave of fighters. Celia's hands hovered over the controls. She knew they couldn't win, not against something like this. Her pulse quickened, fear threatening to overtake her. "Nix, I don't think we can do this," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "Retreat is an option," Nix said. Celia stared at the screen, the alien ship looming larger with every passing second. She thought of the freighter crew, their gratitude still ringing in her ears. She thought of the people who would suffer if this enemy wasn't stopped. "No," she said, her voice steady now. "We can't run. If we don't fight, they'll just keep coming." "Understood," Nick said, its tone carrying a note of respect. "Tactical options available. Recommend targeting their command module to destabilize their systems." Celia nodded, her fear giving way to a cold, focused determination. "Let's finish this." The Zypherian surged forward, its weapons primed for one final assault. Celia's hands moved with newfound confidence, each action deliberate and precise. The alien fighters swarmed, but she anticipated their patterns, evading their attacks with ease. As they closed in on the capital ship, Nix provided a steady stream of data, guiding her toward the command module. The Zypherian's plasma disruptors tore through the ship's defenses, creating a narrow path to their target. Celia locked onto the command module, her finger hovering over the trigger. For a brief moment, she hesitated, the enormity of what she was about to do washing over her. Then she fired. The plasma beam struck the module with devastating precision, and the capital ship began to break apart, explosions rippling along its hull. The alien fighters faltered, their coordination disrupted. One by one, they fell to the Zypherian's guns. When the battle was over, Celia stared at the wreckage, her chest heaving. She had done it. They had done it. "Enemy forces neutralized," Nick said. "The immediate threat has been eliminated." Celia let out a shaky laugh, a mix of relief and disbelief. "I can't believe we pulled that off." "You demonstrated exceptional capability," Nick said. "Your performance continues to exceed expectations." Celia leaned back in her seat, the weight of everything catching up to her. She knew this wasn't the end, far from it. But for the first time, she felt like she could face what was coming. As the Zypherian drifted through the debris field, Celia looked out at the stars, a sense of quiet resolve settling over her. She wasn't just a mechanic anymore. She was a pilot, a fighter, and perhaps something more. And her journey was only beginning.